Hi, this is John. Today we're taking a little trip down memory lane. On here, this is my website circa 1999. This was the first year that I had this domain. I had actually created most of the content over the past 5 years on a site that was linked to from my local newspaper site. They stopped doing that in 1999, so I had to do something or quit, and I decided to get my own domain, and that domain is powar.com. If you're wondering about Powar, that was my gaming handle for years, from the 80s onward, short for Poet Warrior, which was, if you've ever watched Apocalypse Now, Dennis Hopper referred to Kurtz as a warrior poet. I flipped it, called myself Poet Warrior, and there you go. That was the name of the site. Powar was what I used when I gamed. And so when I thought of a domain, rather than do something intelligent like writing.com, I did Powar. This site was my first published on the domain, and I believe it was hand coded. And by hand coded, I mean I found other people who are doing similar things, stole their code, repurposed it, make the look and feel the way I liked it, and published it. This was actually pretty common back then. Internet wasn't so corporate as it is now. So most of us were doing it as hobbyists. And if you found something you thought you liked, you grabbed it. And that's like this little thing, which was a nice tool to jump back and forth between sections of my site. I believe this may have been the first instance of JavaScript on my site. You could flip back and forth. We'll see if one of the links, if these work. Let's try reviews. And yeah, so this is a series of my book reviews. Things like Economical Guide to Self-Publishing, The Writer's Book of Checklists, which is a very good book if you can find it. It's out of print. And This Business of Writing, which is probably an even better book, also out of print. But if you can find either of those two books, I highly recommend them. Guerrilla PR, How to Make Yourself Famous, Associated Press style book. I reviewed a bunch of books. And that's what I'm using is the Wayback Machine, archive.org. And if you ever want to look at earlier versions of websites, it's a really cool tool, and I like doing it. I look at my old stuff, and I also look at a lot of other older sites. I like to look up my old writing buddies from back when blogging was getting big. This is Preblog. The word blog, if it was out there, had not actually entered my consciousness yet. It was just websites back then. I was a pretty early blogger. I probably started using WordPress in 2002, which was when it was still in beta. But back then, this was hand-coded. Soon after this, and probably if I ever go over the next years, it was done in Microsoft Front Page, which was their big tool at the time. And I really like that tool. I miss Microsoft Front Page, although for obvious reasons, we don't want to use it anymore. But for its time, it was actually a pretty good tool. Coworker's sister, Molly Holschlag, wrote the book on Microsoft Front Page. She wrote a lot of books. I had a search feature. It worked reasonably well. I doubt the search feature is going to work on the Wayback Machine. And then a little bit of an introduction, and I was trying to establish the fact that I had credibility. So I said it was created in 1994. And that was when I created my first website. It was at easystarnet.com. That was the local newspaper's site. And you had a little tilde and my handle, Powar, and that was the link that got you there. My goal with the site was essentially to provide good information for writers and, of course, a little bit of self-promotion. It's not like I was doing it out of pure altruism. In fact, I was very happy that I did HTML. It got me my job that I currently had when I was working on the site then, which was I was a technical writer at IBM. That lasted for about 3 years. I could not stand working at IBM, so I moved on. It got me that job, and it actually got me the next job I worked at after that, which was at Intel, put together their websites using Microsoft Front Page, actually, on that one. It was an internal site, but it was for their project managers and project manager training. Oh, the tools back then. As you can see, I had the Employment Center. This was the very beginnings of when I was posting jobs. That became a huge driver for traffic on my website. At this point, traffic was probably about 400 to 500 hits a day, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but somewhere in that area. It's hard to go remember that far back. But because I had moved this from one site to another, it was already pretty popular. And I probably had a little HTML forwarding thing that got them straight to this site from there. It was still building. I was big enough that I was able to publish other writers. This is an article from Jenna Glatzer, the Beginner's Guide to Freelance Writing. I had a few of these on there. I didn't pay a lot, $25 an article, something like that. But by internet terms, actually, I was supposedly a fairly high paying gig. And, I had a little money at the time. IBM paid pretty well, so I didn't mind doing that. And the fact that I did publish other writers was one of the reasons my site got popular, because writers would come to it out of the idea that maybe they were going to sell to me. You can feel free to email this address all you want. It's long gone, along with azstarnet.com. They're now tucson.com. But I had a number of topics. It's a fairly extensive site, and I would discuss things like software, technical writing, and such. The FAQ Center was my frequently asked questions. Unfortunately, this link won't work. People would send me questions and I would answer them. I got a lot of good story ideas out of doing that. And then there would be the feature articles, and these are mainly the newest articles, but also anything that was fairly popular. Cool little rainbow effect was just an HTML effect, not an image. There was a nice little thing you could do with HTML at the time. I don't know if that trick would still work. I liked it. It was an easy way for me to have some color in the header without putting out an image and slowing the site down, because site speed was very important back then, because people were dialing in at 14.4K, 56K. It wasn't like today. Almost everybody was still dialing into the internet. You didn't have direct lines. You certainly didn't have the high-speed cable. So these sites, the faster you can make them, the more traffic you got. So I was very straightforward with what I did. Thanks for taking that trip with me down memory lane. I'll take a look at the site again around 2002 and see what improved and what went downhill. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.